Chapter 7, Big Finish. Although that doesn't mean this is the last episode or last chapter. Shaggy and Scooby-Doo were last in line for the agility course. Dogs zigzagged around the small posts on the ground and jumped over bars. Shaggy and Scooby watched as dogs ran up and down a tall wooden ramp. It was almost Scooby's turn. "All right, Scoob," said Shaggy. He rubbed at Scooby-Doo's shoulders. "You can do this, buddy." Scooby-Doo looked at the course and all the people watching. He gulped. "Rat Hill is a riddle tall!" Shaggy held up the box of spunky snacks. "Don't worry, pal." He reached in and pulled out a handful of treats. "I got you covered." Over at the judge's table, Daphne motioned to Shaggy that it was Scooby's turn. "And go!" said Shaggy. Scooby-Doo raced across the field. He zigzagged around the posts, then dashed up the hill and zipped down the other side. Scooby-Doo skidded to a stop at the finish line. "Rata!" shouted Scooby-Doo. He bowed as the crowd clapped and cheered. "Hoo!" Everyone went quiet in the arena. Daphne ran out onto the field to join Shaggy and Scooby-Doo. "Did you hear that?" asked Daphne. "Like, yeah," replied Shaggy, "and it can only mean one thing." Suddenly, the two monster mutts ran into the arena. Everyone screamed and began to scatter in every direction. Dogs ran toward the exit. "Come on, Scoob," said Shaggy. "Like, let's leave those mutts away from all these people." "Good idea," agreed Scooby. "What?" asked Daphne. "You want those things to chase you, you two?" "Don't worry, Daph," said Shaggy. "We've been eating spunky snacks. They're special treats to make you brave. We're not afraid of anything." Shaggy turned toward the beast and began to wave. "Yoo-hoo! Creepy monster mutts, come and get us!" yelled Shaggy. The two beasts turned their red eyes on Shaggy. They growled and sprang towards him. "Come on!" shouted Shaggy. He led the way as Daphne and Scooby followed. The monster mutts were close behind as they headed toward a set of doors. "Maybe I need a spunky snack," cried Daphne as she ran. Chapter 8, The Final Clue. Shaggy, Scooby, and Daphne raced through the halls in the arena. They sprinted up and down staircases and through the maze of hallways. No matter how fast they ran, the monster mutts stayed on their tails. "Like, find a place to hide, Daphne," said Shaggy. "Scoob and I will distract them." Scooby-Doo nodded. "Rah! Rah!" "Okay, you two are really starting to freak me out," said Daphne. "I'm telling you, Daphne, it's the spunky snacks," Shaggy explained. "Like, I guess everyone will have to get used to us being brave from now on." "It's just plain weird," said Daphne, as she turned a corner and looked for a place to hide. Shaggy and Scooby skidded to a stop in front of a supply closet. They ducked inside. They closed the door and just the monster mutts caught up to them. Double checking. The two beasts growled and clawed at the door. Bam! The door flung open and knocked the mutts across the hall. Shaggy and Scooby leaped out of the supply closet. They each wore a gray uniform. Shaggy held a mop while Scooby-Doo pushed a rolling bucket of soapy water. "I tell you, these dog shows sure are tough on us working guys," said Shaggy. "Roo said it," agreed Scooby. Shaggy leaned on his mop. "Like I've already gone through 2 pooper scoopers." The monster mutts got to their feet. They lowered their heads and growled at Shaggy and Scooby, and they stared at them with blazing red eyes. Shaggy looked up. "Hey, you're chucking dirt all over our clean floors." The monster mutts looked ashamed. They lifted their paws and checked the bottoms of their feet. Shaggy bent down to the mop bucket. "Like, I guess we'll have to start all over." He tilted the bucket towards the mutts. Soapy water splashed all over the floor underneath their feet. "Come on, Scoob!" shouted Shaggy. Shaggy and Scooby ripped off their uniforms and climbed onto the rolling mop bucket. Scooby paddled with the mop as they rolled down the hallway. The monster mutts looked at each other and then back to Scooby and Shaggy. They grumbled and ran after them, but the floor was too slippery. At the end of the hallway, Shaggy and Scooby hopped off the bucket. They turned a corner and ran. They found an unlocked door and ducked inside. Suddenly, a bright light blinded them. Like who turned on the light? Asked Shaggy. Shaggy and Scooby, said Velma. She lowered her flashlight. Boy, are we glad to see you. Velma, Fred, and Daphne stood in front of an open file cabinet. They were in Mrs. Jameson's office. Just in time, too, added Daphne. Fred and Velma found out who was behind the Monster Mutt mystery. Shaggy held out his hands. No, don't tell me, he said. Like I don't want to ruin the surprise of Velma's report at the end. She's really good at it, added Scooby. Velma smiled. Thank you, Scooby. Well, before that can happen, said Fred, we need to secure those mutts once and for all. Shaggy stopped and looked around. All right, here goes nothing. Now, Shaggy put the silver dog whistle to his lips and blew. All around him, dogs thought what they were doing. Let's see. Hoo! The two monster mutts pushed through a nearby door. People in the crowd screamed and ran. Shaggy held up his hands. It's all right, folks. Like, they want us, not you. He blew to the whistle once more. The monster mutts turned toward Shaggy and Scooby. They growled as they crept closer. Now, Scoob, shouted Shaggy. He and Scooby-Doo took off. They ran through the grooming area with the monster mutts close behind. They pushed through the door that led to the vendor area. The big beasts followed. Shaggy and Scooby zigzagged around the booths. The monster mutts were just about to catch up with them. Just then, Velma popped out from behind a costume booth. She blew her dog whistle and the mutts skidded to a halt. They were about to go after her when Fred popped out from behind a grooming supply booth. He blew a dog whistle, and the mutts turned toward him. Then Daphne came out of hiding and blew her dog whistle, too. The monster mutts looked left to right, up and down, side to side. They didn't know whom to chase. Scooby-Doo took his position in front of a pile of stuffed dog toys. Ruby-Doo! He shouted. Everyone stopped blowing the whistles. The monster mutts locked eyes with Scooby-Doo. The beast took off after him. Scooby-Doo turned and dove into the pile of stuffed toys. The monster mutts leapt after him. Woof! Stuffed dog toys and stuffing flew everywhere. A cloud of fluffy white stuffing filled the air. Shaggy ran up to the pile. Like, are you okay, Scoob? When the stuffing settled, the pile of toys was gone. Instead, a large cage that stood in its place. The monster mutts were supposed to be trapped inside the kennel. Instead, Scooby-Doo was stuck inside. The monster mutts stood on each side of him. Ruh-roh, said Scooby-Doo. The monster mutts growled as they inched closer to Shaggy. Chapter 10, Hounded. Like, that's it, said Shaggy. He pointed at the monster mutts. Sit! The mutts stopped moving. They looked at each other and then back to Shaggy. Then they both sat down. Shaggy raised his eyebrows. Like, that actually worked. He pointed at the mutts again. Lie down. The mutts both lay down. Okay, roll over, ordered Shaggy. The mutts rolled over. Their long tongues drooped from their mouths as they panted happily. They don't look so scary now, said Shaggy. That's because they're not monsters at all, said Velma. Velma and Fred walked over to the mutts. They each grabbed the backs of their collars. When they pulled, the mutts' long, shaggy costumes came off. There were 2 tiny red lights on each costume, where their eyes were. When the costumes were gone, all that was left was 2 big hound dogs. Daphne opened the kennel for Scooby-Doo. Everyone gathered around Velma and the hounds. Velma smiled at the crowd. Now it's time to reveal who's behind all of this. Okay, I didn't, shouted Mr. Whitman. He shook his head as he walked toward them. I can't keep my secret any longer. Mr. Whitman, asked Daphne, you were controlling the monster mutts this whole time? Mr. Whitman looked confused. What? No, I don't know anything about that. Then what did you do? Asked Fred. Mr. Whitman sighed. I made up the whole story about spunky snacks. They don't make dogs brave. They are nothing more than tasty dog treats. What? Asked Shaggy. Rot? Asked Scooby-Doo. We thought you were behind all this at first, admitted Velma. But then when we found a dog whistle in the security room, we knew then that the monster mutts had to be well-trained dogs, added Fred. After checking everyone's files, we discovered that Jocelyn LaRue used to be a dog trainer for movies and TV commercials, reported Velma. Mrs. LaRue looked shocked. That's true, but why would I want to scare everyone away from the dog show? That doesn't make any sense, said Mrs. Jameson. She and Percival have won the Liberty Dog Show for the past 4 years, he continued. Shaggy wasn't listening. He stood there with wide eyes. But the spunky snacks, Velma held up a small white fluff ball. That's where the final clue comes in. At first we thought these things were just something from the dog toys, said Fred. But then we realized that there is very good reason why Mrs. LaRue would want to drive everyone away from the show, said Velma. Hit it, Daphne. Daphne plugged in a hairdryer for one of the grooming supply booths. She turned it on and aimed it at Percival. When the air hit him, it blew away all his fluffy fur balls. Soon the dog was completely hairless. Everyone took a deep breath in surprise. Shaggy shook his head. But the spunky snacks! Mrs. LaRue hung her head as 2 security guards took her by the arms. It's true. We tried a new shampoo and Percival lost his hair. I didn't want the judges to find out about his fake fur. But if everyone else left the dog show, you and Percival would win again, finished Velma. That's right, agreed Mrs. LaRue, and I would have gone away for 2 if it weren't for you meddling kids. The security guards hauled Mrs. LaRue away. Now, Shaggy still looks wide-eyed. But the spunky snacks aren't real? Velma walked over to him. That's right, Shaggy. You were brave all on your own. You were great, Shaggy, said Fred. He slapped Shaggy on the back. Oh! Everyone spun around to see Scooby-Doo sitting between the howling hound dogs. Now, Scooby pointed his nose at the air and joined him. Ruby, howoo! The end. And now for what we learn at the end of the book. Glossary. Agility. Agility is a dog sport to which a dog owner directs a dog through an obstacle course in a race for both time and accuracy. Arena. An arena is a large area that is used for entertainment or sports. Catwalk. A catwalk is a narrow walkway high in the air. Nothing to do with cats. Grooming. Grooming means cleaning and making an animal or person look neat. Howl. To make a loud, sad noise, like the sound of a dog or a wolf. Ingredient. An ingredient, is different things that go into a mixture. Platform. A platform is a flat, raised structure where people can stand. Like in a lot of my gaming videos, for example. Pose. To keep one's body in a particular position. A vendor. A vendor is a person or company offering something for sale, like something for dogs or people. Discussion questions. What's your favorite kind of dog? Why is it your favorite? What do you like best about it? Jocelyn LaRue tries to cheat to win the dog show. What are some reasons why it is wrong to cheat? Scooby-Doo did some amazing tricks during the dog show. What kind of tricks can you do? Writing prompts. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy thought that spunky snacks made them brave, but they were brave all on their own. Write about a time when you were brave. The Liberty Dog Show was a fun contest. Come up with your own cool contest and write about what you would do to win. Scooby-Doo and the gang solve many mysteries to go on all kinds of adventures. Write about what they might do next. Like maybe in next episode, for example. Peace out, everyone.